recovery. This is a disclaimer required by our funder, who is the USDA. We thank them for a grant that we received through Rural Utility Services Department for which has funded this webinar and additional work that we are presently engaged in specific to reuse. I just want to go over a few housekeeping tips for people who may need just a little reminding. You'll see there's a phone number here that is provided in case you have any technical difficulties. And I was just informed that my slides are not advancing on the audience view, and I'm not sure why that is. So I'm just going to stop, try to go back. Well, I'm going to ask Athena if you can contact GoToWebinar to find out why slides aren't showing for the audience as I'm going through. I'm going to continue for the sake of time, and I will let you all know that the our webinar will be recorded and the presentations will be available on NERC's website afterwards. You should see a control panel on the right-hand side of your screen that can be opened or closed with the use of the orange arrow, and sometimes that closes by itself, but you may want to control that on your own. The other thing is we will be taking questions throughout the webinar, and that you can do that through the questions box on your screen. I am going to introduce our first speaker. She's Jackie King. She's been the Executive Director of SMART since 2009 and has worked closely with the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, as well as the New York State Association of Reduction, Reuse, and Recycling, also known as NICE R3, in helping them launch statewide textile recycling campaigns. Jackie, we can now see your presentation and you are ready.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Marianne, and thanks for allowing me to participate in this webinar. I'm pleased to represent SMART, which is the acronym for the Secondary Materials and Recycled Textiles Association. SMART's been around since 1932, and our members are involved in all aspects of textile reuse and recovery. A little background on what we consider acceptable textiles to be reused or recycled, and generally it's any clothing, household textile item like sheets or towels, commercial linens that might come from a laundry or from a hospital or a hotel can be reused or recycled as long as it doesn't have any odor in it, and it's usually, I say, as long as it's clean and dry. So there's a lot of material out there that, you know, the condition of it really clean and dry is the main concern for our members. I have a very big list. There's probably more things on here that could be considered a reusable or recyclable textile. Unfortunately, it doesn't go from A to Z, but it goes from B to U. So you can see it's a wide variety of materials. And again, you know, as long as those materials are clean and dry, don't have any hazardous materials on them, there is a second life for them. I know that a lot of times we get questions from people about, for example, bras. People think, oh, that's gross. They would never reuse or recycle those. But we actually have a member that is specifically involved in bra recycling. So there is a use for just about any kind of clothing or textile or apparel that people have that they would otherwise think they might need to throw away. In the textile recycling industry, most of my members use recycling and reuse interchangeably. So I know a lot of times people talk about recovery or reuse or recycling. So with our members, we just kind of lump it together. If you think about clothing that's sold in a thrift store or at a Goodwill or Salvation Army store, those materials are really the reuse materials that are reused textiles. The materials that end up being made into wiping cloths or rags that can be used in a lot of different environments, from auto industry to different industrial applications, those are really more a true recyclable. Also, materials that don't end up being reused as clothing or made into a wiping rag can be ground up and made into completely new materials, and their basic fibers are ground up and then converted into something else. We have a lot of materials that talk about the benefits of recovery and reuse of textiles. One of them is an infographic we've developed that points out the benefits to the environment of reuse and recovery. And this one that's on the screen is related to the amount of greenhouse gases are reduced, and the equivalence compared to some other recycling industries that people think of more prominently than they do think of textile recycling. So, reducing or reusing textiles is the equivalent of the 2 million tons of textiles that are recycled each year, are equal to about 1 million cars being removed from America's highways. So, compared to some of the other bigger recyclables like plastic or glass, textiles really are a great green story for the public to know about. A lot of people say, well, what happens to these materials? Where do they go? And from a recycling and reuse standpoint, about 45% of clothing and textiles are used as secondhand apparel, so those are reused. Another 30% are made into the wiping cloths that I talked about a minute ago. And again, those kind of cloths have been used for years. A lot of them come out of either clothing that's torn up and made into a wiping rag, or sometimes it will come from seconds of different materials that people may have made, and they have the mill ends from that. And then about 20% is made from the fibers that are ground up when neither of the applications that I mentioned before, the wiping cloths or used clothing, are used for those, but they grind the materials up and make them into a variety of products. Anywhere, any type of insulation you might find in your car is made out of recycled textiles and the fibers from that, along with carpet padding. So those are some of the predominant uses. We have a member who makes insulation for the inside of your home, construction insulation, strictly out of denim, and it's a blue product, even though it's really green, but it's made out of blue jeans. And really, the process for textile reuse and recycling hasn't changed a whole lot, other than that some of the areas, especially in the sorting of used clothing for different types of applications or areas that people might want the clothing, some of that has become automated. But the major thing that I think has changed is in the transparency that a lot of our members who are involved with collecting clothing through bins, we've become a lot more transparent about how we describe what we do, whether the people doing it are partnering with a charity or they're strictly a for-profit organization. And also, I think there's more of a recognition today from the public and from government entities that there really is a benefit to people knowing about textile recycling as an important recyclable. A little bit about SMART, as I mentioned before, it stands for the Secondary Materials and Recycled Textiles. Secondary materials, a lot of people are confused about what that means. A lot of times it's a second from a particular type of application. It could be from fabric or it could be from clothing. A lot of times some of our members are working with some non-woven materials that are seconds. But we are a nonprofit trade association. We have about 160 companies, and all of them are committed to textile recovery and reuse. Our members are involved, as I mentioned, some of it is in the pre-consumer market, where they're dealing with byproducts from companies that are either involved with clothing manufacturing or repurposing different materials, and a lot of that is made into the wiping cloths or into the fiber conversion arena. In the post-consumer market, which is what most people think about, is all of those materials, for the most part, are reused. The materials are graded. A lot of our members will acquire excess clothing and textiles from charities. A lot of people are unaware that many of the thrift stores or for example, a Goodwill store can only sell about 20% of the materials that are donated to them. So they work very closely with a lot of our members to sell the excess that they can't sell. And then that helps them with their charitable efforts that they need to do or training programs that they may have. And as I mentioned previously, some of our members do collect clothing with bins and use recycling bins for that, and a lot of them partner with communities to place them or with individual property owners to do that. SMART has a lot of goals, but number one is to increase the awareness about the need to recover and reuse textiles. We want to continue to increase the supply of textiles in the marketplace that are reused or recyclable, and to decrease what's being put into a landfill or incinerated. We also want to help, and that's part of the reason I think I was asked to participate in this webinar, to provide expertise to government entities or recycling organizations that might be thinking about launching a textile reuse and recovery program, and trying to offer help from our members who could become partners with the different organization or government entities. Another thing that we believe is beneficial to organizations that want to partner with smarter communities is that it does help with the cost of destroying these materials either through incineration or waste disposal. And again, our motto for some time has been donate, recycle, don't throw away. About 85% of clothing and textiles are not reused or recycled, and almost 95% of them can be reused or recycled. So it's a really, combination of raising awareness about that and trying to recover those materials is prominent in our goals. We've developed a lot of materials, and all of these are available on our website to help tell the story about where recycled clothing and textiles go, but also to tell the story of what's not being recovered. Unfortunately, about 81 pounds per person is thrown away each year of clothing and textiles in the United States, and there is a use for these materials, and we want to try to encourage people to work with our member partners or work with communities to recover them. This is an infographic that can be found on our website under our cities and towns page, and it tells the story about where the materials go, how many billions of pounds of materials are recovered each year. This is another one that also is very good at describing the different markets of where things go. We also have, which I didn't share in this, an infographic on generally the life cycle of rags, so where things go. This is a similar story, but all of these, again, are available on our website. We also developed a couple years ago some materials that were designed to help teach elementary school students about textile recycling, and those are available as well. We have a tab that says Educators and Kids. So, you know, if you're interested in a little bit more about how you could spread the word to young people about textile recycling, that would be a great place to go. One of the things that we also have is a smart member locator, which is helpful for communities that may want to partner with us to search for companies in the area that might be able to work with you to collect some of the materials if you're going to launch a textile recovery program. We've had some recent initiatives related specifically to clothing collection bins. I mentioned earlier that, you know, this is very important for us to be transparent, or for our members to be transparent and clear about whether they're a for-profit company collecting for on their own or collecting in conjunction with the charity. So we developed a clothing collection bin code of conduct and some other materials that clearly lays out requirements for people that are going to be placing bins. And you know, mostly it's information about labeling that gives the name and address of the company, a person, a place to call, to contact for maintenance issues, and also that they regularly maintain the bins. We have also developed, you know, other materials to help cities and towns thinking about drafting ordinance to help regulate bins, because a lot of times that has become a problem in cities and towns. And we're pleased to say that we partnered with New York State, with a legislator, to pass some bin legislation just in 2015, and it is based primarily on the tenets of the Smart Draft Ordinance. So we're pleased about it. It was just signed into law at the end of the year in 2015, and goes into effect, I believe, in June of this year. They asked that I talk a little bit about the Council for Textile Recycling. It is a sister organization to SMART. It is open to municipalities and states if they want to join at no charge. The goal for the Council for Textile Recycling is to have zero textile waste in landfills by 2037. The Council for Textile Recycling has also partnered with SMART on some other efforts. One was in New York State, which you're going to hear a little bit later from Dan Rain about that, and some other projects that we've worked on with them. I'm not going to go into a great deal about NYSAR's program because I know Dan's going to talk about it, but the high point, I think, for us was that we applied for, in conjunction with NYSAR, to receive an award from the EPA, and we won the 2015 EPA Environmental Champion Award for that program, which we see as a model to go to other states to encourage textile reuse and recovery campaigns. And I won't stomp on Brooke's presentation, which is coming up next from the Massachusetts Department of the Environment, but we've also actually partnered with Mass DEP since 2011, but we kind of reinvigorated the approach to textile recovery and are launching a program hopefully this month. We had a stakeholder meeting in Boston in October and going to use a lot of the same materials that were developed in conjunction with the New York State Association of Recycling. Ways that you could help if you're in a city or town or a community is to promote textile recycling, have convenient collection points. We usually say the biggest days to do this are Earth Day, America Recycles Day, and sometimes when you're partnering with colleges at the end of the semester because of college students cleaning out their materials. And also including, you know, textile recycling as a part of communications about materials that could be involved in recycling. We are interested in partnering with other communities. Our critical thing that we need, though, are members in the community our members that can help to support by collecting and also providing SMART with resources needed to partner on the campaign. So we are actively looking at that, but again, we're not a huge organization, but if we have members concentrated in an area where we feel like they are willing to support, we're willing to do it. We also think it's important that you have all the stakeholders engaged in your community, which includes not just for-profit textile recycling companies, but charities and thrifts, and then all the government agencies. And it is really important that you get a consensus from all the partners on the messaging about the program and the activities that are going to take place. And that's all I have.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jackie. It's wonderful to see the power of a trade association and how they can make a difference through partnering.
It is great.
I would now like to, I'm passing the screen over to you, Brooke, and I would like to introduce Brooke. Brooke Nash manages the Municipal Waste Reduction Branch at Mass DEP. Brooke's interest in textile recycling was piqued after Mass DEP's 2010 waste characterization studies identified textile disposal at 230,000 tons per year. She spearheaded the DEP's initiative on textile recovery, which began in 2011 with a stakeholder summit. Brooke, before you begin, I just want to remind everyone that we are inviting you all to ask questions, and there is a chat box in that control panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and we encourage you to post your questions there, and then we will get to them later in the webinar. Okay, Brooke, think you're ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be presenting on this topic, which is near and dear to my heart. Let's see, Marianne, I'm trying to advance my slide, and okay, I thought we had this all set up.
The little arrow on the bottom of your screen, and you can point it right. Yeah, if you click on that arrow, try that.
Oh, there we go. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to try and go quickly through these slides because I want to make sure there's time for questions. But you know, why focus on textiles? I sort of like to refer to this portion of the waste stream as the perfect recyclable. It was sort of one of those aha moments. It's a significant amount that gets disposed of. And it's an easy to identify segment of the waste stream. We think of it as low-hanging fruit. It sort of had all of the criteria to make it ideal to focus on with a strong collection infrastructure, mature export and domestic markets. In fact, in 2011, our timing was probably really good because the markets were at a I don't know if it was an historic high, but markets were very, very strong. But nonetheless, so the timing of launching it was good then. And the textile recycling supports businesses and organizations in the local economy as well as around the world. And so it's the perfect example of a triple bottom line of getting the environmental benefits, the economic benefits, and the social benefits out of removing a material from the waste stream. So Mary Ann mentioned that you know, we convened what was really a meeting of about 15 people in September of 2011, but it was quickly dubbed the summit, and I think that was because this was really the first time that a state government had sat down with members of the textile recycling and recovery industry and had a dialogue about, gee, how could we work together and support each other to further our mutual goals. We had about 15 of us at the table, and we had all sectors represented: charities, for-profit collectors, graders, brokers, fiber recovery folks. We did not have municipalities at that initial meeting. This was really sort of a we wanted to educate I wanted to educate myself and DEP staff on what sort of, what is this all about, and tell us what we can do to get involved in textile recycling. Coming out of that meeting, we identified pretty quickly that the key takeaway was the public really does not understand what can and can't be donated, and you saw Jackie's slide with that huge list of items. So not only does it include things like, curtains or tablecloths or throw pillows, but also it doesn't have to be in pristine condition. The zipper might be broken, there could be a button missing, and so we really felt like that was the key gap that we needed to bridge, is to get that message out to the public. So we did that with really a no-budget plan. We went out, I call it the road show. We put together a panel, somebody from Goodwill in Boston, from a private textile recycler based in Massachusetts. We had somebody from one of SMART's members who is a wiping cloth manufacturer. And we went out and told the story. We presented in front of a number of municipal audiences, Municipal Recycling Council meetings. We had incredible turnout, and it was sort of like lifting the curtain on a whole industry that we, and I say we meaning us recycling folks, just didn't know anything about. There's a lot of parallels to the traditional recycling industry, in that the players are extremely diverse, and you have for-profits, you have charities involved, small companies, large companies, locally based and globally based. But it really was, it sort of sparked the interest and captured the attention of municipal recycling staff, who are our target audience, because we figured they were the ones that were going to have to get this word out to their residents. We issued a joint press release that fall in conjunction with America Recycles Day, and that is, when I say we, DEP and SMART, who's been our steadfast partner in this since we started. We got some great media coverage, and you can see hyperlinks in here, which I'm not going to click on, but you can actually look at the minutes from our first stakeholder summit in October of 2011. I've got an example of we got a great Boston Globe piece. So again, sort of telling folks that forget what you thought you knew about donating clothing and textiles, because it's really different than what you might have thought. And we also launched a textile recycling website. What this was all about was really about partnerships. As I said, our budget was basically zero. It was, my staff time and my regional staff that promote recycling to cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth. And it was about putting people together, really making these connections. And that is exactly what happened at these meetings that we held throughout 2012 across the state. Goodwill got introduced to municipalities. Salvation Armies came and met municipalities. It was sort of, this, wow, we had no idea of the potential and the opportunity here. And when you tell, a municipal recycling coordinator whose job it is to maximize the amount of material they can divert through their transfer station, that here's a new segment with ready markets, with plenty of players, with maybe even a revenue stream for you, as many for-profit textile recyclers pay municipalities for the textiles that are recovered. It was kind of like, it was just a natural. Things just unfolded in a very organic way. And I put a few links in here to provide examples of just how this really sparked the attention of municipal recycling coordinators. City of Salem's recycling committee, all volunteers, just held their 5th annual textile recovery event, which is a huge all-day on a Saturday in the fall. They use Goodwill as their partner. They get great coverage about it and collect an unbelievable amount of textiles. South Shore Recycling Cooperative is a cooperative of 14 communities on the South Shore. They have an excellent web page on textile recycling, and have promoted it. And this is just an example of only a couple of hundreds of communities that picked this up and ran with it. And then schools, which I'll talk about a little bit more, also a very big key player. Jackie mentioned her resources that SMART has provided, and I will just say it's been a pleasure to work with an industry that's been so eager to connect with folks and provide resources and information, answer questions, provide speakers from their members. Oops, sorry about that. Oh, how do I go back? I just advanced by accident. Anyway, so SMART was certainly provided us with many, many, many tools that we used to share with municipalities through a textile recycling web page that we built on our website, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Schools turned out to be the other sort of, wow, who knew, that schools and textiles go really well together. Again, there's an opportunity to educate kids about the benefits of donating clothing, the social benefits of that, the environmental benefits, and many schools, in fact, raise significant funds through that. We've promoted this to schools through Mass DEP's statewide Green Team, which I thought I had a hyperlink to that. I can add that, Mary Ann, when I send you the final version of this. But we communicate with about 1,200 teachers and administrators throughout the state, have a monthly newsletter, and provide curriculum and resources to teach about recycling in the schools. And so we have done numerous outreach pieces linking folks up with SMART's curriculum, which is excellent for schools, highly recommended. And so that was one way that we reached out to schools. And then municipal recycling coordinators also did a lot of this work for us. They heard the message at these regional workshops and went back and talked to schools. I've put connections in here, links in here to a couple. Centerville Middle School up in Beverly, kids did this incredible Recycling Superheroes video about textile recycling. It's really worth a look. It's amazing what the creativity that went into that. Weymouth Public Schools, I think, just cleared $26,000 that they have earned in the last 3.5 years through textile collections. I think there are 18 schools in the district. No, maybe not 18 schools, 11 schools in the district. Every school recycling from elementary up through high school. And you can find a case study on our website about the Weymouth Public Schools program as well. So this really turned out to be a marriage made in heaven as well. And then important to remember, the colleges and universities are also huge sources of textiles, and provided a couple of examples. We did actually take this message. While colleges and universities do not fall within my realm or scope of work at DEP, it falls under our commercial branch. It was natural to just reach out to my colleagues there and say, hey, this is a message we should really get in front of colleges and universities. And we do hold a couple meetings a year for our college and university recycling council. And so in January of 2014, 2 years ago, we brought in the same folks from charities, from for-profit recyclers, from SMART, and had a great turnout and a great discussion. I've just listed a few other organizations that work with universities, colleges and universities, so I would encourage you to explore those. These are all hyperlinks here. So we did launch a web page in 2014. This is on DEP's website. It's just a screenshot, and I'm not going to take you to it in the interest of time here, but you can see that we've got a lot of information. We've got a basic fact sheet about textile recycling. We have case study on school recycling programs. We have links and downloadable content for flyers and outreach materials, information about school programs, and we continue to add to this website. So we've just recently added the material from our October 2015 summit. And so, as Jackie mentioned, we'll call it Textile Summit 2.0. We decided 4 years later, September of 2011, was our first meeting, that it was time to sort of reconvene, bring players back together, and kind of reinvigorate our message. What we did differently this time is that we invited municipal recycling coordinators and schools to participate. We did not have those folks there in 2011. This summit turned out to just it really mushroomed into quite an event. You know, we originally were talking about 30 people or so. Well, we wound up with over, I think, close to 70 registered and almost 60 in attendance from 8 states. Every sector represented. A number of you who were on this call, I think, were at that meeting, and you can see, you know, the broad cross section of folks that were represented. It was really exciting, and I think some of the highlights were that, you know, this was a room full of folks who were competitors, but the tone was extremely collaborative. There was a great willingness for people for all the players to understand that, you know, a rising tide floats all boats. We have got a long ways to go. We're not at the point where we're fighting over getting those last few scraps of textiles out of the trash can. As Jackie showed us, we're still throwing away about 85% of them. So we've got plenty of room to improve, and there's enough to go around for everybody. So so that was really exciting to see. That folks really want to and we're willing to share information in a room with competitors, whether they be for-profit or nonprofit competitors. We did talk about markets, and the markets have been soft in the last 6 months to a year. But again, as with the recyclables market, it's all about the long view. We don't stop collecting or tell people no thanks when markets are soft. We continue to collect, and we know that markets will bounce back. You know, one of the big challenges, as Jackie mentioned, was how do you come up with a universal message? And that we spent quite a bit of time talking about that. We heard from Rhode Island and New York and the terrific work that they have done on messaging around recycling. The working title that Mass DEP has right now is Worn or Torn, Faded to Fashionable, Donated All. We'll probably shorten that to either Worn or Torn or Faded to Fashionable. But there was quite a lively discussion about that. We did talk about collecting data, how we can, as anybody who works in state government or federal government knows, it's all about data. And surprisingly, when I posed the question to this group, who would be willing to report to DEP on tonnage data, there was a broad consensus that yes, folks would be willing to do that, industry, for-profit and nonprofit. We have not moved forward on setting up a reporting platform yet, but I was encouraged by the response. We did talk with schools at the summit. Opportunities are just enormous there, and had some great presentations from 2 of our school districts that are particularly active. And you can see all of the information, the agenda, attendees, minutes, and all the presentations are on our website now with that hyperlink there. And so Jackie also mentioned that we have entered into a memorandum of understanding with SMART and the Council for Textile Recycling. We are on target, I believe, to launch with an event at Goodwill in Boston the end of this month with our Secretary of Environmental Affairs and other members of SMART in attendance. We chose Goodwill because it's a location that's convenient to Boston and to our Secretary's office, but it's the campaign is very broad, and the message we're trying to get out is there is a place for your textiles, whether you donate it at the bin on the corner or to a local thrift store or through your child's school or a Goodwill. There's no wrong place to donate. In conjunction with that, we will also launch an online searchable directory, which I'm going to try to show you quickly. And then we've also sort of in the plans are to put some money, DP funding, towards some paid media and advertising a la Rhode Island, I'll call it, and you'll hear from Crystal later about some great, particularly social media advertising that they have done. It would probably be in that vein. And then the other...
Can I interrupt for just a second?
Yeah, am I out of time?
Yeah.
So could you
just wrap it up?
I will wrap it up. We are asking municipalities to buy onto our outreach campaign, and we're sort of leveraging their participation by offering them a bonus point through our Recycling Dividends program. It's our newest program. Municipalities accrue points for taking certain actions, and they get paid once a year. So we've created a new category or criteria bonus point for recycling dividends program, and they will participate by completing a number of activities, such as including a link to our new searchable database on their website, holding a collection event, issuing press releases, and so on and so forth. This is our new online searchable directory, which I will not demonstrate because I've used my time up, but we've got, I think, 300 listings in here. I searched it earlier for my zip code and came up with 70 listings. We will continue to add to that directory, and this is something that DEP maintains the content of and approves postings, but it's hosted through Retrack. And then on the horizon, again, kicking off our campaign, promoting participation for that bonus point in our recycling dividend program. We'll be holding webinars for municipalities on how to use the toolkit, again, modeled after New York, so great examples. And then next fall, we're hosting in Massachusetts the International Reuse Conference and Exposition, which will have a lot of textile content in it, and we're actually talking with SMART. Yeah, we don't have a confirmation, but SMART may piggyback onto that and hold a one-day event in conjunction with that to bring their members and other stakeholders together and to talk about key issues. And that's where I'll end.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Brooke. We have a lot of questions coming in, and I encourage you to keep passing them on to us. I mentioned before it was the chat box, but I made a mistake. It should be the questions box that you post your questions to us. Now I'd like to pass our screen over to Dan Lilka-Sprain. Dan chairs the Reclose New York Textile Recovery Campaign and is a NICE R3 board member. He also serves as the recycling coordinator for the town of Bethlehem, New York. Dan, your presentation is ready.
Good afternoon. Thank you to Marianne and NERC for hosting this and everyone for tuning in. Well, you already heard from Jackie and Brooke about a little bit about New York's campaign, our program, which is called Reclose New York, and I'm here to tell you a little bit more about it. It's our first statewide effort to target a specific category of recyclable material and address the approximately 1.4 billion pounds of textiles that are estimated discarded each year throughout the state with a potential value of $200 million. And as Jackie mentioned, we were very pleased to partner with SMART and CTR in launching the campaign, and they've been extremely helpful. So we're grateful to all of the collaborative efforts with our campaign partners. Why are we focusing on textile recovery as our first statewide campaign on any single category material? Similar reasons to what Brooke has already outlined. Again, in New York State, it's over 5% of the municipal waste stream is made up of textiles, and only about 15% is currently being recovered. We also see it as a very low-hanging fruit, big returns for small investments, and what I've heard dubbed the robust reverse supply chain is already in existence. Unlike organics recovery or other types of materials that need to have infrastructure created, there's already that reverse supply chain of the collector boxes or sheds and materials getting to the sorters and processors and donated to where it needs to go or sold. It's already been in existence for well over 100 years in a lot of places. That is not infrastructure that needs to be created. And there are significant environmental and economic benefits. I want to especially thank NERC because it was an April 2nd, 2013 training that was really one of my original inspirations for focusing on textile recovery and helped inspire the rest of our campaign. As Brooke mentioned, residents and us recycling professionals alike were really misinformed, or poorly informed rather, about textile recovery up until that time. And that was a real aha moment for me about the education that my colleagues and our fellow residents throughout the state could benefit from. I did an analysis of the town situation as well as a survey of the statewide textile recovery current situation at the time, and presented my findings at our state conference in 2013, and that really formed a framework for the beginning of our campaign genesis. We learned from Brooke and Massachusetts' groundbreaking efforts. As she mentioned, they got started with textile recovery back in 2011, so we had a lot to learn from them. And it's really satisfying that in turn there's some things we figured out that they're being inspired by our efforts, and the other way around as well. And we continue to do that with both Rhode Island and Massachusetts. We also held a series of statewide textile recovery stakeholder summits. First one was in April 2014 before our campaign launch, and our second one was actually the day after Massachusetts. Just coincidentally, we were able to have my colleague Melissa Young represent New York at Massachusetts Summit and bring back ideas from theirs to ours the next day. They were both hosted at Center for Sustainable Community Solutions at Syracuse Center of Excellence. We focused on obstacles and challenges of textile recovery, outreach strategies that could achieve our goals, and then the second summit really focused on building a coalition among all stakeholders, but especially collectors and processors, that would be a level playing field, consistent messaging. And we also discussed the challenges, some of which Brooke has already mentioned in Massachusetts as well, metrics, getting that data and sharing it, and the challenging market conditions right now. As I mentioned, we were inspired by Rhode Island and Massachusetts and their efforts to really be able to bring otherwise competitors to the table in a very congenial atmosphere. And we were successful in that as well. Happy to report. We really had a diverse group of stakeholders at both summits, from municipal, public, and private sectors, educators, students. The only main stakeholder group that we have not been successful at bringing to the table yet has been the fashion design and retail sector. We're still struggling with that. We did some presentations at conferences again and had our NYSAR conference in Cooperstown, a ribbon cutting. You can see the photo there of the ribbon cutting from November 2014, and then we officially launched our campaign on America Recycles Day. What are some of the successful tools and strategies that have allowed us to, at least initially, create what was the most far-reaching statewide effort to date for textile recovery in the country? Perhaps, according to SMART, partnering with SMART and CPR, as I mentioned, engaging that broad spectrum of stakeholders. Brooke mentioned the term, but we've always been operating with the same philosophy, not of competition, but really if we are able to increase the amount of recovery, that will raise all players. Municipalities and the New York State Governor's Office as well passed resolutions in support of the campaign, which really helped spread the word. We used a variety of traditional and social media. We had 2 free webinars on engaging media on textile recovery specifically, and some of the website tools that Brooke mentioned wanting to emulate. We have public information pages. We have a robust search engine where folks can find donation locations by their zip code, and also a media toolkit, which has been very helpful with templates that any municipality can use to easily send out press releases. Here's the media toolkit on our website. As you can see, it's under other links and resources. nytextiles.org is the URL, and then it forwards to the NYSAR website, nytextiles.org. You can see we have media advisories, press releases, talking points, letter to the editor, PSAs, all kinds of things that can be helpful in spreading the word. And there is also the webinar telling the story of textile recovery in your community to the media available there for anybody to view as well. Other successful tools and strategies. We focus on the economic impacts. 200 million in revenue and potential of 9,600 jobs created throughout the state by our estimate, working with our partners from the private and nonprofit sectors.
That's fine, don't worry about it. Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, we have some background noise. I'm not sure if it's a speaker, but if you could just be aware. Sorry, Dan.
No problem. At the local level, we shared the information at the county level with all the counties in New York State about the economic impacts estimates for their county. For example, the town of Bethlehem is located within Albany County. An estimate of $3.3 million in potential lost revenue if all of the textiles which are currently being thrown into the landfill or incinerated were recovered, then we could potentially recover approximately $3 million more. To give you a very local example, the town of Bethlehem, we have 3 bins pictured there. We have some more now, but we don't have the data yet from them because they're brand new. But just these 3 bins, we've received, and 2 collections, one for America Recycles Day and one for Earth Day, received $7,500 in revenue. That's just from 1 location and 2 collection events. And that's much needed for the town of Bethlehem. And it's easy revenue too. It's unlike some of our other recycling, there's not a lot of the for-profit partner, the American Clothing and Recycling Company, takes care of maintaining the bins. They've, I don't know if you can see from the photo, but they've actually labeled them specifically with our campaign logo, Town of Bethlehem, and they even have, in addition to the list of acceptable materials, they have some language over here on the left of the donation slot that says torn, worn, ripped, stained, missing zipper, 1 shoe. It's all okay as long as it's clean and dry. That type of language they added for us. And we also focused on the eco impacts, resource use, and greenhouse gas emissions. Here's one example. We had a Your Jeans Are Thirsty campaign where we've estimated that almost 3,000 gallons over the life of a pair of jeans, from the growing of the cotton to the end of life, which is almost 11,000 liters. And so by UN estimates, that would supply about 550 people's water needs for an entire day if that 1 pair of jeans was recovered and reused rather than being trashed. So that, we hope, really makes people pay attention to the value of textiles as recyclables, as something that could be recovered for reuse or recycling. Would take a lot of plastic bottles or pieces of paper to achieve that kind of value. Some of our other successful strategies on social media, we had textile sales. Here's one of them from one of our committee members, Nancy Webster. And some of our successes. As Jackie mentioned, we were very honored to receive a 2015 EPA Environmental Champion Award. Here's a picture of Melissa and I accepting the award on behalf of the campaign and our partners. The campaign initially, in the immediate wake in November 2014, we estimated over 100,000 pounds just in those events on campaign launch, and well over 1 million pounds since, and continuing to rise. As I mentioned, or at least it was listed on the slide, the town of Bethlehem has recovered over 150,000 pounds just at that 1 location, those 3 bins and those 2 collections. So I'm sure it's well over that 1 million for the statewide. For the campaign launch, thanks to our partnership with SMART and their PR firms, assistants, and people statewide, our recycling coordinators really helping spread the word, and everybody who helped, we received an estimated $253,000 in media placement value for free just at launch alone. And as I mentioned, the EPA award, we also received a New York State Senate legislative resolution. honoring the campaign and our efforts. I was asked to include some information about the finances. We contributed, NYSAR-3 contributed about $5,000 initially, largely for the website, especially the searchable database portion. And in year 2, we're budgeting about $2,500. But a lot of significant in-kind support by SMART and CTR, and some private donations from companies as well that are very interested in supporting the work of the campaign, and the media assistance with the webinars and everything. That's some of the support that has really made a difference. I'm pleased to announce that we were awarded a $20,000 grant for the new year from the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute. And that's through a partnership with the New York Product Stewardship Council, the Product Stewardship Institute, which is national, and our partners CTR and SMART. So we're very excited to be able to access that grant in the new year to help strengthen the campaign. Our challenges, keeping the momentum going, especially in the second year and in between our Earth Day and America Recycles Day event. Consistency and continued collaboration across the collectors and with bin labeling. Changing those long-standing public perceptions that Brooke mentioned. I did as well, about what can be accepted and why and where to donate it. The challenging market conditions all the recyclables are experiencing right now. Getting those metrics, and as I mentioned, the fashion design and retail stakeholders, getting those folks involved at the table. Our next steps,
Dan,
formalizing.
can I just interrupt for a second and ask you to wrap up?
Perfect. This is my second last slide. Next steps, formalizing, expanding our coalition of collectors and processors, and that grant from the Pollution Prevention Institute will help very much. Jackie mentioned some brand new legislation regarding bin labeling, and there's also some proposed mandatory clothing labeling as well, legislation that we're going to continue to support. Metrics collection and sharing, as I mentioned, and continuing our expanded public education and PR campaign. And here you can look on the slides when they're shared more specifics about that. One final thing I will note is that we're considering doing a one-day statewide textile collection event in early April, keeping it separate from Earth Day and Earth Week activities, just focused on textiles throughout the state. And there's my contact information.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
It really is exciting to see what some concentrated effort and organization brings to textiles recovery, that it's proof that there's just so much out there, and that with a little help we can really recover quite a bit of those materials.
Very true. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Crystal Neuser. She's the Education and Outreach Manager for the Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation. She oversees the corporation's facility tours, educational programs, and website, and she also previously managed their social media work. Crystal was responsible for planning and executing Rhode Island's textile education campaign. And Crystal, your presentation is ready.
Thank you so much. I will start off with an apology because I was not supposed to be presenting today, and I'm filling in for my boss. So I found out about an hour before the webinar began, but pulled something together for you that is hopefully very helpful. So the journey for Rhode Island really began back in April of 2013 when I attended the Textile Recovery Workshop that was put on by NERC in Connecticut. And maybe some of you that are on the phone were in attendance that day. And some of the key presenters that day were SMART. SMART was there. The Council for Textile Recycling was there. And Brooke was there from Mass DEP. And for me, it was really a game changer. It was the first time that I was ever hearing this key message of, you know, it's not just clothing and shoes and gently used clothing and shoes that goes into these bins. And I had been in this position for 3 or 4 years at that point. I was throwing away my badly worn, stained, ripped clothing, and we were sharing those messages with Rhode Islanders. So I was really blown away by this, and so I came back all jazzed up to do something about it. And where we began was with our recyclers. So I gathered information based on all of our cities and towns, and one of the great things about Rhode Island is that it's so small that we only have 8 different organizations and businesses collecting textiles in Rhode Island. And I was able to gather that information from our 39 cities and towns, looking at the data that they report to us every year and those who have bins at their transfer stations or their recycling centers, and what organizations or businesses they were working with directly. So between that list, doing a little research, making sure there were none that I'd ever seen, traveling around that wasn't represented here, we came up with these 8 organizations, and you can see them listed here. So my first step was to reach out to them all individually, try to figure out who the right person was to talk to, and talk to them about my experience at the NERC workshop, the message that they were sending, and would they confirm for me that yes, this is true, we do take these other things. And so I set up a series of phone calls, in-person meetings, facility tours where they're actually doing the sorting and baling, and presented to them this idea of doing a statewide campaign on the issue. And what we basically told them was that if they agreed that this was a good idea and they were willing to investigate it more with us, we would pull them all together with their competitors in a meeting, and what we would do is present to them a concept for what the campaign would look like, what would it entail, what would the pieces be, what would the look and feel be, and get their input and see if they would buy into something like this, all at no cost to them. So luckily, all 8 of them said, yes, we're interested in doing this. We'll be happy to come and see what you guys are presenting. So our key messages that we were trying to get across with the campaign were that there's more than just the gently used clothing and shoes that can go into the clothing, quote-unquote, bins in Rhode Island, that the ripped, torn, and stained clothes are okay, that the non-apparel textiles like towels and sheets are okay, and that textiles need only be clean, dry, and odorless. You've heard that a bunch of times already today. Another message is that these items aren't a burden to textile recyclers, they're a bonus. So getting over this feeling that people have that they feel like if they are putting things in the bin that are ripped, torn, or stained, that they're doing something wrong, that no one would ever want those, that they're making the job of the textile recyclers harder. So trying to get rid of that, that idea. And then what happens to them next, that they don't just go on to be reused and worn by the kid down the street. They're reused, they're repaired, they're repurposed, and yes, some of them are recycled. So what we did is we pulled our advertising firm and PR firm together, and we asked them to do some research for us on audience and who we would really be targeting with this campaign. So they did some research on the spend being on clothing, new clothing every month, $121 per person, and that Rhode Island women between the ages of 18 and 49 are responsible for 80% of textile purchases. They're routinely replacing their clothing, their purses, their shoes, all of that, and are presumed to still assume at least most of the responsibility for things like laundry and thinning out wardrobes in the household, especially with children. So we decided that Rhode Island women between 18 and 49 would be our target audience for the campaign. And then what we asked them to do was present us with 3 concepts and campaign ideas that we could possibly use, and I'm just going to stick to the one that we landed on. So we went with the concept of what to do with these things. People are wondering, what do I do with something that's ripped, torn, stained? And one of the major campaign elements that we did was launch a campaign microsite, which everything else that you'll see for the rest of the presentation sort of funneled into. So you can go to ritextiles.org, and you can still see this site that's up. And the concept of, what do you do with these ratty old clothes and textiles? Well, you wouldn't give them as a gift. You shouldn't throw them in the trash. You can't put them in your recycling bin. And that was important for us because not only are we seeing textiles in the trash, but we have a huge problem with textiles in our MRF, wrapping around the spinning equipment, heating up, catching fire, so it's a huge safety hazard there too. So we want to get as much of it out of the waste stream and the recycling stream as possible. So you can visit that site. We also did a radio spot, a 60-second radio spot, and I just have a little screenshot of part of the script here for you. So the concept behind it was a TV game show. The TV game show starts, and the host is asking questions of the contestants of what do you do with these stained, ripped, worn-out clothes. So, Ted answers first. He buzzes in and answers first. He thinks you definitely throw them in the trash. He gets buzz, and the crowd's sad. And then Joanne buzzes in, and Joanne's kind of unsure, and so she says that you put them in the recycling bin, and again, and the crowd's disappointed. Finally, it gets to Mary, and Mary's very confident with her answer, and she knows that you bring those to the same place that you donate good wearable clothes. And she goes on to go back and forth with the host and share more information about the types of things that you can donate, how they need to be prepared. And then also mentions that if you want more information, you would go back to ritextiles.org, our campaign website. We also did web advertising that went along with the concept of both the radio ad and the microsite. And so this shows you 3 screenshots of how the ad would run. It's an animated ad that would show the A, B, and C, and D, and show them slowly getting crossed out. Not A, not B, not C. It goes into D, and where they're welcome. And then we did paid social media as well. So our whole sort of theme for our Facebook and our Twitter accounts was, this campaign for the month. And so this is a screenshot of what would be an image that we would use and do paid media by boosting. So posting the information and then putting dollars behind it to make sure that it's getting a larger reach, especially with that target audience. You can drill down and say, I want this to be boosted to women in Rhode Island between the ages of 18 and 49. And along with this, we had images that were developed for each of the 8 recyclers that were a little different. So they would show a different item that people would normally not think they could put into the bin, and then show the organization. And so we ran those along with all other content throughout that month that were just themed on textile recycling and passing information onto Rhode Island residents about who takes them, what they take, what happens to them next, why is it important, and so on and so forth. This last piece is the biggest, most important piece to me. This is something that I really felt like I didn't want to do this campaign without this piece. I felt like we were spending a pretty significant amount of money for the benefit of the textile recyclers, and we weren't really asking them to do much, but this is really, really important to me. So the fact that, the bins, and as some others have mentioned, still often just say clothing only, clothing and shoes only, and it was really hard for us to come at this being the state central waste facility, being the home to the landfill, telling people that this is okay, and then when they get to the point of actually making the decision on what to do with their clothing, being, faced with clothing and shoes only, and not feeling like why would they trust our messaging from our campaign when in fact when they actually get, to the place or to the bin, they're being told otherwise. So this was a really big sticking point. And so what we did is we developed a sticker, and we had all 8 of the partners buy into actually placing the stickers on all of their bins in Rhode Island. 7 of the 8 used a very, very large sticker. I don't have the dimensions on me right now, but it's really, really significantly large on the side of the bin or on the front of the bin. And then one of the recyclers was reluctant to do that and asked for a smaller one. So we did say, okay, and we had a smaller one made for them, but I feel like it's not really to their benefit when you can't really see it from the side of the road as easily as some of the other recyclers. But at any rate, at least there is this indicator that they are a part of this Rhode Island Textiles.org campaign. There's the QR code there that would bring people to the website if they use that, they use a smartphone. But just having that messaging coming from them physically was really, really important to us. So that was a biggie. And then what we did to sort of launch the whole thing was we planned a kickoff event. And we did this right around, right before back to school time. So you can see the poster for the event is over there on the right. It's August 21st. And this is just a map of the parking lot where we did it, which was at the Warwick Mall. And they were having, it's back to school time, so it's very busy anyway for back to school sales, but they were also having on that day a back to school fashion show, which was being promoted by a local radio station. And so we worked with them on some advertising, and we asked each of the 8 participating recyclers that were participating in the campaign to come and set up their bins. So there were basically the 8 of them, you can see on the map, they were just set up right side by side by side. We had that whole section of the parking lot, and we asked people to come and donate their textiles on that day, and then be entered in for a chance to win gift certificates to Warwick Mall. So we asked each of we had a grand prize, and then we had a second and a third prize. We had a $1,000 grand prize, $500, and then $250. And for the $1,000 grand prize, we asked each of the recyclers to basically put in $125 each to make that happen. And we got all of them to agree to do it. There wasn't any problem. They said as long as everyone else is doing it and no one is, being an exception, they're happy to do it. So everyone did that. Then we get a $500 donation from SMART, and we get a $250 donation from the Council for Textile Recycling. So that was a really huge, important, big draw for the event. We added the information about the event to the landing site leading up to it, and we also ran a shorter commercial that was just advertising the textile event in addition to the sort of radio game show concept. Here's some pictures for the event. I was just scrambling, trying to look for the numbers on attendance in pounds, and unfortunately, before it was time to start, I couldn't find it. But it was really popular, steady flow of traffic during the day. Like I said, all 8 of them were set up side by side. We worked people through the crowd with this little, you can see up at the top, like a clothesline, and we tried to stick up items that maybe ripped or torn or stained or people wouldn't know were donatable, recyclable. And we just worked it so that each organization had a table set up next to their bin so that they could interact and talk to the people that were making a donation. And when people were coming through, we would basically we were trying to make sure that each of the 8 that were there, because they took all the time and energy to show up for this, that they were each getting an even sort of amount of the textiles from that day. So we had staff on hand that was basically trying to just go down the row and point people as they came through and make sure that everyone was taking a turn. Sometimes people would come and they would say, I really want my stuff to go to the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. We would say, absolutely, that's fine, and let them go. But if they didn't really have any, preference, we would try to make it so that everyone felt like it was even. And the feedback from all the textile recyclers, they were really happy with the event. They, were surprised by the amount of clothing they got. They got more than they thought they would get, especially since it was going to be divided by 8, and just got really good PR out of it. We did a media advisory and press release, and then we did a follow-up after the event. Larry Gruppen, who was with SMART at the time, came and was on hand at the event as well. And we invited some special guests to do the ceremonial first donation. So because it was back to school time and the whole thing was the back to school fashion show event that it was associated with, we reached out to the most recent Rhode Island Teacher of the Year. She's up in the top right-hand corner at the time. And she came and made the first ceremonial donation. We had other teachers, you can see some of them below there, from other schools come, and they were wearing their gear, which was really cool. And then we also had our executive director there. We had the executive director of the Department of Environmental Management there, just to sort of show their support for the overall initiative.
Okay. And Crystal, can I ask you to wrap it up, please?
Yep. So this is actually my last slide. This is our budget. It was a $213,000 campaign, and you can actually see the breakdown there. And if anyone is interested in having, a copy of this, or drilling down and just talking more about the details with me, I am happy to have that conversation. There's my contact information. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Crystal. Okay, so now we are going to get back to the questions and answers and period. And I would like to say that the presentations as well as the recording from today's webinar will be available on NERC's website. But without delay, I'd like to ask Athena to read off some of the questions that have come in.
I will. Hi, everybody. All right, so we have way too many questions to go through, so we will make a start, and any questions we don't get to, we will send on to our presenters and try to answer them as best we can. Okay, and presenters, if you can please keep your responses short, that would be great. Do charities make money from the clothing they sell to textile companies? I guess that'd be Jackie.
Yes, they do, and the money they get from our members that purchase the excess materials, the charities funnel back into whatever programs they have, be it a training program or whatever the main mission and goal is of that particular charity.
Okay, and why do thrift stores limit the types of clothing they have? I guess my understanding is that a lot of it's a space limitation, because they don't always want the soiled or dirty clothing.
That's correct. Yeah, they are limited in space, and certainly, think of it as any other kind of retail store. They're only going to have so much room, and they're only going to want to put things out that they think can sell.
Great. Can you talk? Can someone talk about the market a little bit? Maybe Jackie, is there a surplus of clothing? We've heard rumors about that, and where's the market headed?
Well, right now it is, and I think some of the other presenters have discussed how recyclables in generally, just like many commodities now, are, there's oversupply, primarily due to a lot of the markets for the materials that our members collect are international. And because the dollar is so strong compared to certain other currencies in the world, it's just very difficult for areas that used to rely on used clothing from our members. They can't afford to purchase in because of the dollar situation. But a lot of this has happened in the past, not maybe real recently, but it's, just like any market, it's going to fluctuate. So there is probably a little bit extra supply than there was 4 years ago or 5 years ago, but there certainly is a market for these materials. And as I think Dan mentioned, it's not like a lot of other recycling markets that maybe are kind of new to people. There are already companies in place that are already dealing with it in basically the three areas that textile recycling companies do, either reuse the recycling into wiping rags or, grinding it into fibers to make new products.
Do you have any papers or white papers on your website, Jackie, that might go over what's a domestic market and what's sold overseas and what happens to it when it's sold overseas?
I think I have some materials. So certainly, if I can certainly email that out. I do know that about probably at least 60% of the clothing that's reused that our members collect is sold internationally. At least 60% of it is. But as far as the wiping cloth materials, that is not as high a proportion. And a lot of the information I have about that is really more from my members. It's not like we've done a study of it.
Okay. How about the worn or torn statement? Is that something that anybody can use?
Hi, this is Brooke from Mass DEP. Absolutely, we have not copyrighted that. I think we actually took it off of SMART's website. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No claims on that.
Great. So free for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I had a question. Is there anybody working on a prototype textile recycling bag or a label that says we're recycling our clothes or something like that?
I know this is Jackie again, and I know we do have some members that certainly deal just specifically with packaging, and they've tried, a variety of things. If there's been communities or few that have been interested in curbside recycling, and the biggest challenge with that is making sure those materials stay dry. Otherwise, they're not useful anymore. So we certainly do have members that have worked on certain packaging as far as the labeling and that kind of thing. I know depending on the community that may have that request, we probably have members that have tried to work on that.
In Rhode Island, do you have something like that?
Bags? No, we don't have bags. We do in the instructions on the sticker, it says to bag the textiles. That was really important to the textile recyclers, but nothing in terms of an actual prototype bag for textile recycling now.
Yeah, it might be a good idea, a label or a bag or something that we could all kind of recreate. I guess a question for Jackie, do you all have a textile recovery hierarchy pyramid, like EPA's food recovery pyramid?
I'm not sure I know what that is, so I'm going to say no. But I mean, as far as the amount that you can reuse and recover, is that what you mean?
Yeah, the EPA has a hierarchy pyramid that starts with reuse and then recovery, then recycling, and then trash.
Oh, okay. So it's back to the kind of the numbers, and if people look back at the slides that are mine, 45% is reused. That's the clothing, usually the clothing and apparel that can be reused as clothing or apparel, or linens or sheets, and then 30% is wiping material, so that's recycling because it's usually cut up material, or we call it reclaimed or manufactured, and then about 20% are the fiber conversion materials, where basically they're grinding up the textile materials and making them into a fiber that can then be made into something else.
Okay. The JPEGs that you had up on textile recycling for promotion of textile recycling, I guess, Jackie, are those downloadable, and can people use those for newsletters and on their website?
Absolutely, as long as they don't, change them at all and, give attribution to the organization, to SMART. Yeah, definitely.
Athena, this is Brooke at MassDP. I just wanted to add one more thing to your question about the hierarchy. One of the things that I learned in this is that we should leave it up to the professionals to determine the best place for the materials we donate. So in other words, the supply chain begins with residents or businesses, commercial laundries, hotels, hospitals, individual, householders donating their stuff. And from there, that's where the industry takes over. It starts with donating in a bin, going to a Goodwill or a thrift store or a bin on the local corner, and it trickles down to, they do the sorting, they understand where the value is, what materials can be sold, what materials in their stores, what materials should be sold to brokers, what then goes to wiping costs. So it's sort of leave it to the professionals. Our job is just to get it out of the trash can, if that's what we're doing with it now, and donate it.
Okay.
This is Jackie. That's a great point. It's don't judge it. Our members are very well-versed and experts in deciding where it should go and what's the best market for it. So that's not something the public should worry about, and really about 95% of these materials can be reused or recycled.
So, Brooke, are you working with the Goodwill to accept more of the worn or torn articles of clothing and such?
We are. This is where it can get a little tricky, a little sensitive. Goodwill and Salvation Army and St. Vincent de Paul all agreed that, yes, they are willing to take items that are not in perfect condition. They absolutely have a market for them. They make money off of them. They get a little bit uncomfortable if they feel like the message is, dump on us. They don't want to be dumped on. They don't want to be perceived as a place to take your trash. But the reality is, the director of retail operations for Morgan Memorial Goodwill, which is based in Boston, and they happen to be the oldest Goodwill in the country. They were the first. They cover a huge territory from Worcester to the Cape and up to the New Hampshire border. They are doing a massive expansion of their retail collections. Right now they have about 17, and they're going to add 10 more, I believe, over the next year and a half, 2 years. And so, what this gentleman said at our summit in October was, yes, we want more donations. And it's sort of akin to the concept of, if you tell people to recycle all of their plastics, 1 through 7, you get more of the valuable stuff. And even if the 6s and 7s are not so much desirable or not worth as much, you're still going to wind up with more of the 1s, 2s, 5s that are valuable. So same concept kind of applies. More donation is better. Tell people not to judge what they're donating.
Okay. Yeah, I guess a participant said that Seattle and Portland are working hard with their Goodwills to expand what they accept. So potential model out there. Brooke, do you have any plans to ban textiles in Massachusetts from landfills?
Not as of now. We do not, no.
I don't know if there's any state that does that yet. Anybody heard of a state that does that?
I don't believe there is.
Jackie, or any of the states, any attempts to quantify the climate change benefits of recovering textiles? For example, is there going to be a textiles component of the EPA's WARM model?
Oh, that's a good question. Not that I know, but that's something we should put on our radar screen. I think when we looked at the greenhouse gases, I mean, that was basically taken from a table from, I forget which PA report. But certainly I think that might be something for consideration because, you know, it's related. It certainly does have an impact.
Yeah, I think that would be great
for
a lot of people that use the WARM model.
Right.
Yeah, we've started to do that with our messaging in New York, equate the number of cars equivalent taken off the road with textile recovery, but we're just beginning that, so it would be helpful to have that more formalized.
Okay, anybody on EPA out there, you got a challenge for you. I guess, Dan, maybe I've heard New York's doing some of this, like promoting buy secondhand or even buying less clothing in the first place. Are you doing anything on that, or is anybody else doing anything like that?
Yeah, again, we're kind of in the beginning stages of that. That's something New York is focusing on for our second year and beyond of the campaign, especially is promoting the not only what to do with your textiles that you're no longer want in your household or at your business, but you know, appropriately donate them rather than throwing them out, but also working on from the angle of consume less in general, less fast fashion, and you know, buy secondhand certainly.
Okay, great idea from participants. Okay, and Dan, I guess you mentioned some ordinances that were passed in New York regarding textiles. Can anybody get a copy of those?
Yeah, Jackie elaborated on that in her presentation. Okay. It was just passed in December, as I understand it.
Yes.
And Jackie, is that information on your website yet?
You know, I don't know that I have the final version of the bill, or actually the law, because once, you know, you have to wait for the governor to sign it, which it took him, it was approved by both houses of the legislature in June, and the governor didn't sign it until December. So I think I have the bill, but not the actual law and where it's codified. But that is a great idea, certainly something we can put up there, and I can send that information to Mary Ann so she can have that as a resource as well.
I also want to add that Lowell, Massachusetts had created an ordinance, and that is on our website under our conference archives under the textiles training that we did. So you can get at least one version of an ordinance. And
I know, Smart, you also have some ordinance templates and such on your website, I believe, as well.
Yes, we do. We do.
And anybody out there, any participants, you can email Mary Ann or myself, and we'll be happy to pass on those links to you. Okay, so how about things like tennis shoes? Are we expected to wash those tennis shoes before we put them in a box or give them to Goodwill? And also, what happens to those shoes if they're not sold? Are they recycled?
Well, this is Jackie. I'll go back to the clean and dry. So, yes, I would say you would try to clean them, you know, whether you throw them in a washing machine. I do know that many of our members do take shoes that are not clean. I know a lot of them partner with certain races where people, can't even think of the name of the races, but where it's like a mud race and they run and they take their clothes off as they're running, and that clothing is donated at the end, and so a lot of times it's shoes as well. And then for shoes that aren't resold as shoes, there are uses for shoes to be ground up. I know in some countries, they take them and grind them up and make it a part of asphalt, a component of that. So there definitely is a use of it. I think if people would donate them, usually my members like to say if you would band them up with a rubber band or tie them up so they don't get separated, that's preferable, but they'll even take just one shoe.
Okay. And then there's been a bunch of questions about, what is a worn clothing or a dirty clothing? What does that mean? And I understand that you just don't want clothing that's wet. You don't want it to smell mildewy, and preferably it needs to be washed first, even if it's got a stain.
Correct.
Okay. Curbside textile recycling. I don't know of any curbside textile recycling programs in the Northeast. I think Minnesota has a couple. Does anybody on the panel know of any curbside textile recycling programs?
Madison County, I believe it is, in New York, does that.
Madison does, okay.
If there's anybody from that community on the call.
Okay. Jackie, are you aware of any curbside programs?
Not in the Northeast. I am not aware. I know there was, maybe it's still going on. There was, one of our members is based in Fairless Hills, Pennsylvania, community recycling, and I think there was a little pilot program for curbside recycling. I don't know if it's still going on. I do know that we had a member out in Arizona that was partnering with this. I think it wasn't a whole county. I think it might have just been a city for a textile recycling program, and I believe it's still going on. It is definitely a trickier proposition because of making sure you keep things dry, having the proper bag, figuring out how you're going to collect it, because textile recycling is not like your bottles and cans, which basically you're going to recycle something every week. It's people accumulating and collecting it, trying to make a decision about timing of when to do it.
Any curbside programs planned in Massachusetts or Rhode Island that you guys know of?
Hi, Athena, it's Brooke. So interestingly, I was contacted by a regional manager for a major waste hauler and recycler about a year ago. They were looking into this. I have not heard anything further, but the idea was it would be collected in a plastic bag and placed on top of a recycling cart. And that's about as far as it went. I do know that the city of Brockton in Massachusetts attempted a partnership with Salvation Army, which has a hub in their city, and they advertised to residents that textiles would be collected on a regular basis. My understanding is that they suspended that after some period of time, but I don't have a lot more information about that.
Okay. A couple questions on whether anybody's working with clothing manufacturers or distributors about putting information on textile recycling or recovery on clothing labels and such. Dan, I think you mentioned something on that. Is anybody aware of any kind of outreach efforts at that?
I know that, yes, Assemblywoman Donna Lupardo in New York State had sponsored a bill which was not signed into law last year, unfortunately, it's my understanding, about mandatory labeling for all garments sold in New York State, that they would have to, just like most recyclable materials, be labeled as a recyclable. I know that Smart and Eric Steuben have done some work with some of the clothing manufacturers with Wear, Donate, Recycle labels for some of the clothing. I don't know if Jackie can.
Yeah, that was through the Council for Textile Recycling, and really Eric Steuben is who he's referenced, who's on the Smart Board as well as CTR. And really, Eric tried to get apparel manufacturers to come to some kind of an agreement and really couldn't get them to endorse it, but it was basically trying to get them to put a wear label in clothing that would say where, when you're done with this, donate it, wear, donate, recycle. And I think the challenge is that a lot of times, the manufacturers want to do their own thing and not be all collaborative. I know he was working specifically with the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, trying to get them to endorse it. So it really hasn't gone anywhere. And I think probably a lot of you are aware there's some big apparel manufacturers like Levi's or retailers like H&M that have developed some take-back programs and kind of done their own thing. But it's not putting a label in anything. It's more encouraging people to recycle and then giving them a coupon or something to buy more clothing when they do that.
Athena, this is Brooke in Massachusetts. On our website, we do have a page that lists retailer take-back. So again, it's not labeling the clothing, but H&M, Levi's stores, Uniqlo, which is a new Japanese-based chain that's in Massachusetts now, Nike, Puma. So there are retailer take-backs. Patagonia, North Face, I believe, also accept clothing donations in their stores, but labeling, I do not know of that happening.
A general question, and I'm sure the answer is yes, that any nonprofit reuse center can have a clothing collection bin at their site if they just work with a textile recycler. Is that correct, Jackie?
Yes, yes.
If you want a list of those textile recyclers, you can go to the SMART website to find out how you can communicate with those folks in your state. Couple of quick questions. Is yarn recyclable? Can they put that in a bin?
Yes.
Good. And lots of folks from Connecticut on the call wanting to know how we can advance more textile recovery in Connecticut. Do you have any programs going on in Connecticut, Jackie?
Well, I know that Connecticut is very interested, and I know we've had some communications with some of the people in Connecticut. So, that will remind me to kind of follow up with them, because I know we had a conversation when we were actually meeting in Massachusetts for the stakeholder meeting. I believe that they were there, weren't they, Brooke? The people from Connecticut?
Yes, they were.
Yeah. So definitely we'll want to follow up with them, because I know they were very interested.
Okay, that'd be great, because I'm sure those folks would appreciate it. I think this is an insurmountable task, but there was a question about whether SMART could have some kind of locator thing on their website. I know, obviously Massachusetts has taken a lead on that, and I know Minnesota's got that kind of thing, and NYSAR's got that. Is that something you're promoting through your other workings, Jackie, or any intention on doing that yourself?
Yeah, we previously had a locator on our site, and a lot of our members, particularly those people that have, those companies that have bins, were not willing to provide us with listings of all of their locations. We are going to try to encourage them to provide locations to Brooke in Massachusetts. I'm not sure how many NYSAR got from our members, but a lot of it has to do with competition, and not so much from other members, but from, perhaps other companies who aren't members of SMART that just will look up a location and decide to put a bin wherever our members' bins might be without getting permission, and abiding by all the rules that we recommend for proper bin etiquette. So we don't have any plans right now for besides just our member locator that we have that just lists our member locations. And many of our members do have locations throughout the U.S., so it is difficult. I know if people look something up that our members may have, bins in a variety of states, and they're not going to be fully listed on our member list.
Yep. This is Mary Ann. I just want to draw everyone's attention to the slide that's on your screen right now, because the presentations from today, as well as the webinar recording, will get posted on NERC's website in this week. And the way you would find that is you go to the URL that's on the screen, but then we have a search tool that allows you to search for reuse. If you put reuse in that search tool, you'll be able to cut all the different resources we have. Currently, related to reuse will pop up. I also wanted to let you know that we are working on a reuse guide, and that will be available on our website in the coming months as well. And in continuing this effort to promote reuse through webinars, our webinar 3 in the series will take place in February, on February 17th, and that will focus on the triple bottom line of reuse. And that'll be at 1:30 on the 17th. And then we have a fourth one that'll occur in mid-March. So for any questions that weren't answered today, NERC staff will work with the speakers to get answers for those questions, and we can send them out or have them available on our website. I'm not sure how we'll do that yet, but we will certainly get them answered. And I would like to thank everyone for participating today. It's really been such a informational webinar, lots of good tips, lots of good information, lots of good strategies, and I hope you all have taken away a lot of good pieces that you can integrate into your own programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Sure.